My beloved child. Your soulmate sister finally said something about you that nobody in the room was prepared to hear. For a long time, she had stayed out of it. At least, that is what everyone believed. Whenever your name came up, she rarely joined the conversation. If somebody asked what she thought about everything that happened between you and your soulmate, she usually gave the same careful response. That's between them. Simple. Neutral. Safe. It made people assume she had no strong opinion about you. Some even believed she had never liked you. And perhaps you suspected that too. There were moments when she seemed distant around you. Moments when she watched without saying much. Moments when you wondered whether she secretly agreed with the people who believed you were the problem. But what nobody knew was that she had been paying attention to far more than she ever admitted. She remembered how your soulmate behaved before you became important to them. She remembered the version of them who could detach easily. The one who could end a conversation, shrug, move on, and convince everyone that nothing touched them deeply. Then you came into their life. And something changed. Not immediately. In fact, at first their sister thought the connection would pass. She had seen people become interested in your soulmate before. She had watched attraction arrive, become exciting, and disappear. So when your soulmate began mentioning you casually, she did not think much of it. Your name appeared in small places. A story about something you said. A joke you made. A disagreement. A message your soulmate pretended had annoyed them even though they checked their phone several times afterward. Their sister noticed those things. She just did not say anything. Then your name started appearing when you were not part of the conversation at all. Someone would mention a restaurant, and your soulmate would say, they would love that. A song would play, and they would become quiet. They would hear an opinion and immediately compare it to something you once said. That was when their sister realized this was different. You were not simply someone your soulmate was seeing. You were becoming part of the way they experienced ordinary life. And that frightened them. Their sister saw that too. She watched your soulmate move toward you and then create distance. She watched them become happy after seeing you, then strangely defensive if anyone pointed it out. Once, after what had clearly been a good day between the two of you, their sister smiled and asked, so when are you going to admit you're serious about them? Your soulmate immediately shut down. It's not like that. Their sister did not argue. But she remembered the answer because of how quickly it came. Not thoughtful. Not calm. Protective. As if admitting how much you mattered would make something dangerous real. Later, when problems began between the two of you, the same pattern became more obvious. Your soulmate would complain about something you had done. Their sister would listen. Sometimes the complaint sounded reasonable. Relationships are complicated. You were not perfect either. There were probably moments when you misunderstood them, reacted emotionally, or said something you later wished you had phrased differently. But something about the way your soulmate told the story began bothering their sister. They always started with your reaction. Rarely with what happened before it. They would say, they got upset with me again. But leave out the days of mixed signals. They would say, they keep asking what we are. But leave out how close they became whenever they feared losing you. They would say, they're making everything complicated. But leave out how often they promised emotional closeness and then disappeared the moment you trusted it. Their sister began noticing the missing pieces. Still, she stayed quiet. Not because she agreed. Because she understood her sibling well enough to know that criticism delivered too early would only make them defensive. So she watched. Then came the period when you began changing. Your soulmate noticed it first as distance. Their sister recognized it as exhaustion. There was a difference. You stopped asking as many questions. You became slower to respond. When your soulmate withdrew, you no longer followed immediately. Something inside you had started accepting what your heart had spent a long time resisting. Loving someone did not mean you could keep living inside uncertainty. Your soulmate hated that change. They did not call it fear. They called it attitude. They told their sister that you seemed different. Cold, they said once. Their sister almost answered. Almost. But she held back. Because she wanted to see whether your soulmate would reach the conclusion alone. They did not. Instead, they became more defensive. They convinced themselves you were pulling away because you did not care enough. That explanation protected them from the harder possibility. Maybe you were pulling away because you had cared for too long without feeling safe. And then, eventually, something happened that made their sister stop protecting their comfort. Your soulmate was talking about you again. Not with sadness. With frustration. They said you had changed. They said you were acting as though everything between you meant nothing. Someone else in the room nodded. Another person suggested maybe you had simply moved on. Then your soulmate laughed in that dismissive way people sometimes do when they are trying to hide the fact that a sentence has hurt them. Good. Let them. Silence followed. Their sister looked at them. And this time, she did not let the moment pass. That's not fair. Your soulmate turned toward her. What? She repeated it. Calmer. That's not fair. The room changed. Because she almost never challenged them about you. Someone tried to lighten the mood. She did not let them. Your soulmate became defensive immediately. You don't even know what happened between us. Their sister looked at them for a long moment. Then she said the sentence nobody expected. I know enough to know they loved you longer than you made it easy to. Nobody spoke. Your soulmate's face changed. Not dramatically. Just enough. The kind of change that happens when a sentence reaches a place you have been avoiding. Their sister continued. She was not angry. That made it harder. I watched them keep giving you chances to be honest. I watched you get close when you were afraid of losing them, then pull back when they started trusting you again. And every time they finally reacted, you acted like their reaction came from nowhere. Your soulmate tried to interrupt. She shook her head. No. You've had a long time to tell your side. That sentence quieted them. For the first time, their sister told hers. She remembered a day when you were around the family and your soulmate had been unusually distant. Nobody else seemed to notice. You did. Their sister watched you glance toward them several times. Not angrily. Worried. You eventually asked quietly if everything was okay. Your soulmate answered, I'm fine. You did not push. Later, After you left, your soulmate complained that you had been too quiet. Their sister remembered thinking how strange that was. You had respected the distance they created. Then they felt abandoned inside it. That moment stayed with her. She saw versions of it happen again and again. Your soulmate wanted reassurance without always offering clarity. Wanted closeness without always tolerating vulnerability. Wanted you to understand their silence while becoming frustrated when your own silence finally appeared. Their sister had seen the contradiction long before your soulmate admitted it. Then she revealed something else. Something your soulmate did not know. There was a moment after one of your hardest periods together when you had spoken to her briefly. You had not complained. That was what she remembered. You could have listed every mistake your soulmate made. Instead, you asked one question. Are they okay? Even after being hurt, you were worried about them. Their sister had answered honestly. They shut down when they're overwhelmed. You nodded. Then you said something she never forgot. I know. I just wish they understood they don't have to shut me out to protect themselves. You did not ask her to take sides. You did not ask her to deliver a message. You did not insult her sibling. You simply looked tired. That memory had changed the way she saw everything afterward. Because when your soulmate later described you as demanding, she remembered how carefully you had spoken. When they called you dramatic, she remembered how much emotion you had swallowed. When they acted as though you were trying to control them, she remembered that what you seemed to want most was a conversation. And sitting in that room now, she finally said it. They weren't asking you to be perfect. They were asking you to stop making them guess whether they mattered. Your soulmate looked down. Someone else in the room became visibly uncomfortable. This was no longer casual family conversation. It had become a mirror. Their sister did not enjoy saying any of it. That mattered. She loved her sibling. She knew their wounds. She knew the experiences that made trust difficult. She knew they had learned early to hide feelings rather than explain them. But loving someone does not always mean protecting them from uncomfortable truths. Sometimes it means refusing to help them rewrite a story so they never have to face themselves. Your soulmate finally asked, almost quietly, "So you think everything was my fault?" Their sister answered immediately. No. That surprised them. She was not trying to make you flawless. She knew you had made mistakes too. She remembered moments when you became impatient. Moments when your hurt turned sharp. Times when fear made you ask for reassurance in ways your soulmate experienced as pressure. But relationships are not courtrooms where one person must become innocent so the other can be guilty. Both people can be imperfect. And still, one pattern can cause more damage than the other. So she told them. I think they made mistakes. I think you both did. But I think they were trying to fix something you were still pretending wasn't broken. That was the line that stayed with your soulmate. Long after the conversation ended. They did not respond much afterward. People eventually moved on to another subject. But your soulmate was no longer really listening. They kept replaying what their sister had said. Not because every word was comfortable. Because parts of it matched things they had already begun suspecting. They remembered your final months differently. The way you became quieter. The way you stopped asking certain questions. The way your eyes changed when they gave you another vague answer. At the time, they thought you were losing interest. Now another interpretation appeared. Maybe you were losing hope. That possibility hurt differently. Interest can return. Hope is harder. Their sister's words followed them later when they were alone. They opened an old conversation between the two of you. At first, they scrolled casually. Then slower. They noticed patterns they had never seen while living inside them. You would ask something direct. They would answer halfway. You would try again. They would change the subject. Later, they would send something affectionate. You would soften. Nothing would actually get resolved. The closeness returned without the problem being repaired. Then eventually, the same wound reopened. Your soulmate had once believed the relationship failed because the two of you argued too much. Now they began wondering whether the real problem was that the important arguments never truly finished. You kept reaching the same emotional doorway. And they kept stepping away before the conversation could go through it. That realization did not magically transform them. In fact, at first it made them angry. Not at you. At their sister. It is easier to reject the person holding the mirror than to examine what the mirror shows. They told themselves she had only seen part of the relationship. That was true. They told themselves she could not understand what they had felt. Also true. Then another thought came. If someone who loved them deeply had still noticed the way they treated you, maybe the pattern had been more visible than they wanted to admit. They slept badly. The next day, they called their sister. Not to apologize. Not yet. They asked, "Did they ever say anything else about me?" Their sister knew exactly who they meant. She paused. Then said, "Yes." Your soulmate waited. She told them about another small conversation you had shared with her. It happened at a time when things between you were already unstable. You had said you believed your soulmate cared. That was not the part that hurt them. The next sentence was, "I just don't think caring and knowing how to love someone are always the same thing." Your soulmate went quiet. Because that was exactly the distinction they had spent so long avoiding. They had cared. Deeply. Probably more than you ever fully knew. But they had treated the existence of that care as proof that their behavior should be understood. As if feeling love privately could compensate for the ways they withheld it publicly. As if intention could erase impact. Their sister did not continue lecturing. She simply said, "They saw good in you even when they were tired." Then she added something softer. "That's why I liked them." Your soulmate looked up. Perhaps this was the part they expected least. All this time, they had assumed their sister was neutral about you. Maybe even suspicious. Instead, she had respected you quietly. Not because you were perfect. Because of something more ordinary. She had watched you try. She had watched you care without performing it for an audience. She had watched you protect your soulmate's dignity even when you could have exposed their worst moments. She remembered times when family conversations turned slightly critical and you changed the subject rather than embarrassed them. She remembered you noticing when they were overwhelmed. She remembered the way you celebrated their small victories without making those moments about yourself. Most of all, she remembered how long it took before you finally stopped reaching. People often notice the moment someone walks away. They rarely notice how many times that person tried to stay. Your soulmate's sister had noticed. That was why her opinion carried so much weight. She was not telling them you were destined to return. She was not telling them to chase you. She did not say, "Go get them back." What she said was harder. If you ever talk to them again, don't go back just because you miss how they made you feel. Go back only if you understand what you made them feel. Your soulmate did not answer. There was nothing easy to say. Because missing you had mostly been about their pain. That sentence forced them to think about yours. They remembered every time you waited for reassurance. Every moment you wondered whether asking for more would push them further away. Every conversation where you lowered your needs to keep the peace. And suddenly, their regret changed shape. Before, regret sounded like, "I wish they were still here." Now it sounded like, "I wish I had made it safer for them to stay." That is a very different kind of regret. One longs for possession. The other finally recognizes responsibility. And somewhere inside that change is the real impact of what their sister said. She did not convince your soulmate that you were perfect. She did something more important. She stopped allowing them to remember the relationship only through their own wounds. For the first time, they began holding two truths at once. They had been afraid. And their fear hurt you. They had loved you. And their love had not always been enough to make you feel loved. They had reasons for withdrawing. And you still suffered from the withdrawal. Understanding why someone causes pain does not make the pain disappear. Your soulmate is finally beginning to understand that. Later, they asked their sister one final question. "Do you think they hate me?" She did not answer immediately. Then she said, "I don't know." Your soulmate looked disappointed. Perhaps they wanted reassurance. She refused to invent it. But then she added, "I don't think hate is what you should be worried about." "What do you mean?" "I think you should be worried that they made peace with not needing an explanation." That sentence frightened them more than anything else she had said. Because anger still reaches backward. Peace moves forward. Your soulmate knows that now. And perhaps this is why they have been thinking about you differently. Not obsessively. Not magically transformed. Just differently. They are no longer asking only whether you still care. They are beginning to ask whether they became someone you could safely care for. They are no longer wondering only whether another chance exists. They are wondering what would need to change before asking for one would even be fair. That is a much quieter kind of realization. But it may be the first honest one they have had in a long time. Their sister never intended to become part of your story. She did not speak because she wanted credit. She spoke because she became tired of watching someone she loved protect themselves with a version of the past that was becoming less and less true. And perhaps the most unexpected part of everything she said was not that she defended you. It was why. She had seen the parts of your love your soulmate had become too accustomed to notice. The patience. The restraint. The repeated attempts. The care that survived disappointment until surviving disappointment began costing you too much. She saw it. And eventually, she decided your absence should not be blamed for the distance your soulmate helped create. What happens next remains uncertain. Your soulmate may reach out. They may decide not to. You may still care. You may have changed completely. There are no guarantees hidden inside one family conversation. But something important happened in that room. For once, your soulmate heard your side of the story without you having to defend yourself. And the person speaking was someone they could not easily dismiss. Their own sister. Someone who knew their fears. Someone who loved them. Someone who still looked them in the eyes and said, "They really did care about you. You just kept expecting them to prove it while giving them fewer and fewer reasons to feel secure." Your soulmate has not forgotten that. They probably will not. Because sometimes the sentence that changes us does not come from the person we hurt. Sometimes that person already said it 100 different ways. Sometimes we only hear the truth when it comes from a voice we were not prepared to argue with. And now, whenever your soulmate thinks of you, there is one thought they can no longer avoid. Maybe you did not leave because you stopped loving them. Maybe you left because eventually, loving them required you to stop abandoning yourself. Their sister understood that before they did. Now they are finally beginning to understand it too.